So there's always a debate on which one is actually better, Dallas versus Atlanta. And honestly, I think that's the wrong question to be asking. In this video, we're going to talk about everything from the food, the culture, the weather, what it's like to buy, and what it's like to rent in both cities so that you can hopefully decide by the end of this video which decision would actually be right for you, especially if you're looking to make a move in 2026. Now, I've spent a significant amount of time in both cities. My fiance lived in Atlanta for about a year when we started dating. So I've been to that city and enjoyed it from more of a tourist perspective, at least 7 or 8 times. In Dallas, I've lived here for 5 years. I've been a realtor here, helping people relocate to the Metroplex for 3.5 years. And I'm always constantly getting the question of which city is actually better. So I decided to break down Dallas versus Atlanta. I could come to the conclusion on which city is actually better. And the answer that I got was completely different than what I expected. And before we dive into this video, there's one really important thing that we have to understand about both cities. And that's that Dallas is where Atlanta was about 15 years ago. And I mean that for the best possible way for Dallas. See, Atlanta has already gone through its major boom. The economy there, it's stable, it's mature, it's growing in the right direction, but it's slow and steady growth. The city has already gone through that explosive phase where everything was being built left and right and everyone was moving there. And Dallas is right in the middle of that right now. And what's really crazy about Dallas that points this fact out is that Dallas has ranked as the #1 corporate relocation city for the last 7 years. You have companies like Toyota that have moved their entire North American headquarters to Plano. Samsung just last month announced that their US headquarters is moving to Plano. You have Charles Schwab moving from San Francisco to Westlake. Goldman Sachs investing in an 800,000 square foot campus near the American Airlines Center, making it one of their largest offices in the world outside of New York City. People in Dallas real estate are already calling the area Yaw Street. Another huge thing that we have to explain is that Dallas and Atlanta are physically built and set up in a completely different way, and it changes everything about how the cities function. The closest thing that I can compare Dallas to is maybe something like LA, where you have the main city and then you have a bunch of ancillary, massive suburb cities that branch off of it. Each one has their complete own infrastructure, their own downtown, their own nightlife, their own economies. In Frisco, and Plano, and McKinney, and Carrollton, Allen, those aren't bedroom communities, they are full-blown cities. Like, there are people in the Dallas suburbs who almost never drive into Dallas proper. There are jobs out there, there's entertainment out there. There are generally no reason for them to even come near downtown Dallas if they don't want to. And that's getting more true every year as companies are gravitating more and more to the DFW suburbs. And part of what drives this is just a very Texas thing. People here really value privacy, space, and getting a real bang for their buck. And you see it in the housing, larger lots, more square footage for the money. And because Dallas is almost completely flat, you have no natural obstructions like hills or natural barriers. So the city just keeps expanding outward in every direction without anything stopping it. Atlanta, on the other hand, is very different. The terrain out there is hilly, it's forested. Those natural features broke up the city into true neighborhoods. And because there's more flexible zoning laws, Atlanta has more mixed-use development woven into the residential areas. So you can literally find a coffee shop or a restaurant 2 blocks from your apartment inside of a neighborhood, not as a destination that you drive to, just something that you stumble upon on a random Tuesday afternoon. Dallas has that too, but in Dallas, it's more of the main event. You drive to the entertainment district. In Atlanta, you kind of just walk out and it's already there. So when people ask me the question on which city is more walkable, Atlanta definitely wins hands down. But when you ask me what city gives you more variety and access to more things, Dallas is clearly more convenient. They're just built around two completely different lifestyles. Atlanta literally has the nickname the city in the forest, and honestly, when you're here, you start to get it immediately. Mature trees everywhere, even inside of the small city streets, terrain that has real elevation changes, neighborhoods that look different from block to block, depending in what part of the city that you're in. And it's because Atlanta really loves their history. They actually preserve those older neighborhoods rather than tearing them down. And a lot of that is what gives Atlanta its character. And that's been there for generations. Dallas, they build. And I don't say that as a criticism, it's just the DNA of the city. If something isn't generating value anymore, Texas replaces it with something that will. And that's why there's so much new here all the time. And that makes things new exciting because there's always something new being built. But if historic architecture and preserved neighborhoods matters to you, Atlanta is going to match your vibe a lot more. Now, the weather, I'm not going to sugarcoat this part. Texas summers are brutal. June, July, August in Dallas, you are regularly going to hit the triple digits, like 105, 108 on a random Tuesday. You adapt, you lean into the AC, and you just plan around it, but you can't pretend that it's comfortable. I'm sorry. But Dallas does make up for that by its extremely mild winters. You're not shoveling snow, you're not dealing with months of gray skies, a few cold weeks, and it's already back to warming up. But you don't get a true fall here. The leaves turn, but it just kind of goes from hot to mild, and that's really it. So if you are looking for something that has true 4 seasons, Atlanta is going to be the pick. Spring and fall that actually feel like spring and fall. The winters are mild compared to the Northeast, so that's real. And the heat is humid, and it's really humid. But here, something that honestly surprised me is that Texas gets meaningful rainfall. So the humidity gap, for my opinion, between Atlanta and Dallas really isn't that far off. It's not the same, but it's not as dramatic as people make it. So this next part is the part that's hard to put into a script, because culture is something that you feel more than you describe. But if you're gonna be relocating, you're gonna feel it the moment that you get there. So I just wanna be real about it. Dallas has a really interesting culture because a huge percentage of the people living in the city aren't actually from Dallas. They're actually transplants, people who moved here for work, for opportunity, for a different lifestyle. I'm one of them. I've been here for 5 years and I've only ever lived in the city. And the diversity of people that I've met from all over the country has genuinely been one of the best parts of me living here. Dallas has a strong Black professional community, a large Asian population, a significant Latino community. You're going to meet people from everywhere moving to Dallas. But what you sometimes miss is that true local energy. What I found is that people who live in DFW, but something you are going to miss is that true local culture. The people who have been here their entire lives and watched this Metroplex turn from a small big city into one of the most electric and fastest growing economies in the entire United States. You don't really run into them as casually as you would like because most of them typically live in the suburbs of DFW. So unless there's a huge event or game or something along those lines going on, you're not really going to catch a lot of those locals out on a random Friday night. And another huge part of the culture here is that it really skews towards corporate and polished. Finance, commercial real estate, tech, those are the industries running this economy, and it shows up in how people dress and what neighborhoods are built for. Dallas is an it city right now, and people love new things. Like if a spot just opened, Dallas is probably there. If that same spot hasn't changed in 10 years. Dallas has kind of moved on in a lot of ways. And I'll say this too, going out in Dallas, you feel a certain expectation to be dressed the part. It's not a written rule, but it's real and you notice it, especially compared to a city like Atlanta. Atlanta's just different. Atlanta has deep roots, and you feel that immediately too in a completely different way. Atlanta is known as the Black Mecca for a reason, and it's really not just a phrase. Atlanta is one of the only major cities in America where African Americans are actually the dominant population group. The Black professional class, Black entrepreneurship, the culture, it shapes the city in a real fundamental level that you really just can't find or replicate anywhere else. The HBCUs like Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, Atlanta create a talent pipeline that's very unique in this country. Companies like Cisco have specifically partnered with Georgia Tech and HBCUs because of the talent density out there. The music industry, the film industry, the business community, Atlanta has built something over generations upon generations that no city will ever be able to come close to. And Atlanta really leans into its history. The civil rights movement was a focal point here in the 60s and the 70s. And the city is genuinely proud of that. There's a rootedness to Atlanta that Dallas, being newer and faster growing, just hasn't had the time to build quite yet. Now, day to day, Atlanta is just genuinely more laid back. People there are warmer in a different kind of way. You get the real Southern hospitality where a stranger actually wants to know how you're doing. And you get Southern hospitality in Texas, but Texas genuinely has its own culture that is just different from the rest of the quote unquote South. And going there just doesn't carry the same look the part pressure that Dallas can, being more of a polished corporate city. The people there, they're just more relaxed. They're maybe even a bit more alternative, slightly more open-minded, I would say, overall. So neither of those cultures are better or worse, but they're just two different versions of the city. And neither city is sleeping when it comes to food. And that's just my honest take. Dallas genuinely has an underrated food scene, and you can find a little bit of everything here. Texas does barbecue, steakhouse, and Tex-Mex better than anywhere in the country, in my opinion. Not in my opinion, that's just a fact. And if you're a fan of meat, then you are going to be taken care of in Dallas for the rest of your life. But the restaurant culture does lean a little bit more towards the big, splashy concepts that are relocating from other places in the country. New openings, large venues, experiences really built to impress, which is great, but it can sometimes come at an expense of the little mom and pop spots that have been there for 20 years and just are perfect every single time. If you're looking for that in Dallas, you are going to have to go to the surrounding suburbs to get a lot more of that local energy and local feel. Atlanta's food scene is one of the best in the country, in my opinion. It's slightly better overall, and specifically because of the depth of the local food culture. You can still get incredible Tex-Mex and barbecue, although it's not the same as it is in Dallas. You have incredible Black-owned restaurants, immigrant-owned spots, neighborhood joints that have been around for decades and have zero reason to change what they're doing because they've already figured it out. And the food culture there feels a little bit more layered. There's more to discover if you're actually willing to go and explore. So if you're a serious foodie who loves stumbling on hidden spots, I think Atlanta has a little bit of the edge. But if you want world-class barbecue, steakhouses, and Tex-Mex, Dallas is going to take care of you. Now let's get specific on renting, because there are some small differences between Dallas and Atlanta on that front. Dallas apartments, they go really hard on amenities. Like that saying that everything is bigger in Texas couldn't be closer to the truth here. Extravagant high-end pools, gyms, sky lounges, co-working spaces, rooftop decks, even golf simulators. The lobby is designed to impress you before you even see the unit. And there's a reason for that. Dallas has around 24,000 active apartment units under construction right now, versus Atlanta's pipeline has dropped to around 16,000, which is near a decade low for them. So Dallas developers are competing in an oversupplied market, and they have to win with something, and amenities tends to be the hill that they try to die on. Atlanta builders, they're doing less volume these days, so they can invest a little bit more into location and unit quality, since it's not as expensive to build as it has been for them in the past. The clearest example of this that I can give you is EV charging. I drive an electric vehicle, so when I was touring apartments in Atlanta to get a feel for the market, I was asking about the electric charging situation. And I kept getting answers like only certain units come with charger access, or the whole building only has 2 total charges for the whole building. And at that moment, I realized just how spoiled that I had actually been. I live in a new building here in Dallas, and we have about 30 or 40 chargers in our garage alone. So the gap isn't just small, it's a completely different design philosophy. But here's the thing, Atlanta's apartments, they aren't trying to out amenity each other. They're really betting on location and proximity to entertainment, as Atlanta is the better lifestyle city in my opinion. Because of how Atlanta neighborhoods are built, that bet usually pays off. You can rent near the Beltline or in Grant Park and have walkability to coffee shops and restaurants right at your door, or at least just down the street. The apartment is a little less flashy, but the lifestyle is a bit more convenient. And one more practical thing for everyone moving to Texas for the first time is you have to set up a lot of things on your own here. Electric provider for one, because Texas runs a deregulated energy market. So you're shopping from a whole marketplace of competing options. Renter's insurance is required by almost every building. Internet is usually something that you'll set up on your own. In Georgia, it's just simpler. Georgia Power is the utility, and a lot of that move-in friction is already handled. So Texas does give you more choice, but Atlanta gives you less complexity. So just know what you're walking into. So let's shift gears and talk about the home buying process in both cities, because for most people, the end game is to eventually get into ownership. So here in DFW, the median income in the metro area is around $92,700, which is honestly great. Atlanta itself sits at around 86,000 to 90,000, depending on the source. So both are well above the national average of 83,000. These are cities where people are making real money. Within the city limits of Dallas, the housing price is sitting around $499,000 median. In Atlanta is closer to 429,000. So Atlanta is moderately more affordable in the urban core, but honestly, neither one of them is cheap. And there is real talk here in both markets to comfortably buy at the median price. You're going to be needing somewhere around $100,000 to around $120,000 in household income, depending on your down payment and what programs you may qualify for. So plan around that number before you get too attached to anything. One benefit of living in Texas is the fact that we have no state income tax, which it's a great thing for entrepreneurs or high income individuals, but the income tax versus the property tax trade-off is a very real thing. Texas has 0 state income tax, and I talk a lot about that because it is real money that you get in your paycheck every single month, but Texas makes up for it with property taxes. The effective rate here runs at around 1.6%, which is one of the highest in the country, versus Georgia, on the other hand, their effective rate is closer to 0.9%, almost half of what we have here in Texas. So on a $500,000 home, you're looking at somewhere between $8,000 a year in Texas. That same home in Georgia, you're looking at closer to $4,500 a year in taxes. That's about a $3,500 difference or close to $300 a month that stays in your pocket in Georgia instead of just going to the county. And honestly, that number matters more than people realize because it's not just savings, it's real buying power. If a lender is qualifying you off of your total monthly payment and less of that payment is going towards property tax escrow, more of it can go towards your actual mortgage. So for the same monthly budget, you can typically afford more house in Georgia than you can in Texas. It doesn't erase the income tax gap. Texas still comes out ahead for most income levels if you run the math, but it is a piece that people forget when they're looking at the sticker price of a house. Now, one unique thing about both of these cities is it's not just all about the metro area. On the Dallas side, you have suburbs where most buyer conversations end up going for all of the reasons that I've talked about previously. We've got places like Frisco, whose name you've probably heard the most. And honestly, it deserves all of the hype. You've got the Star, the Cowboys World headquarters, and a whole entertainment district built around that just for Jerry Jones is out there. PGA headquarters is there, and it's one of the fastest growing cities in the entire country. Plano is honestly where I'd point a lot of buyers right now. It's more established, it's a little bit more affordable than Frisco, and it's genuinely where real corporate action is going down. Again, Toyota, Samsung, JP Morgan, and AT&T's new headquarters are all out there. So you're buying in the middle of where jobs are actually moving. And then Fort Worth, which I think is completely underrated in this whole conversation. Fort Worth is really its own side of the Metroplex, its own city with its own ancillary suburbs, but you know, it's got its own culture as well. Walkable areas like near South Side and the Stockyards, a real downtown, and it's meaningfully more affordable than the northern suburbs or the Dallas suburbs that you'll get on the eastern side of the Metroplex. So if you want more home for your money and you're not tied to the Plano, Frisco, northern Dallas corridor, Fort Worth is definitely worth taking a look at. And on the Atlanta side, Alpharetta keeps coming up and there's a real story behind it. It's been officially nicknamed the Technology City of the South. Fiserv, Equifax, Hewlett-Packard Enterprises, and Microsoft all having a real presence out there. And honestly, here's the stat that has surprised me the most out of this entire trip is that Atlanta processes over 70% of all credit card transactions in the entire country. They literally call it Transaction Alley. And most people have absolutely no idea that the fintech capital of the country largely runs through Alpharetta. You've also got places like Sandy Springs and Dunwoody that are great for families and a bit more affordable. And if you want something close to the city with character, you've got Decatur and Kirkwood. So after everything that we've talked about today, this is kind of where I ended up landing on this entire topic. If you want to be in the middle of a boom, a city and a metroplex that's still in that explosive growth phase, job relocation, stacking on job growth, corporate relocations everywhere you can imagine, go Dallas. If you want something with a little bit more polish and a little bit new and shiny atmosphere, go Dallas. If you want a city that's already had the boom, it's already settled into its identity, a cultural hub with real character, more green space, neighborhoods that feel lived in because they've actually been lived in for generations, go Atlanta. It's not one of those things where one city is truly better than the other. They're just built for different versions of life, and honestly, only you know which one version you're actually chasing. And if what you've just heard has you leaning towards Dallas at all today, I'd love to make you make that move happen. I've been a realtor and apartment locator here in Dallas for the last 3.5 years. And in that time, I've helped over 450 clients find their new home in this city. So my info is in the description. Shoot me a text, shoot me a DM. I'm happy to walk you through the entire process. And if you found this helpful, make sure you subscribe because there's going to be a lot more coming. I'll see you in the next one. You guys have a great day. Peace.